We're picking up a strong signal. It's heading to the surface. Is this Godzilla?
Godzilla for the PS4 is an amazing game, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. I mean, look at it. You go around as a giant freaking monster, destroying everything around you, and you fight other giant freaking monsters with punches, tail thwops, and good lord! This is what life is all about. I don't understand why the review scores were so low here in the States. Some nonsense about the gameplay being slow or whatever, but like, they're giant freaking monsters. Of course they should move slow. I don't want to see my 100,000-ton beast zipping around the screen like it's Smash Brothers. But I digress. This video is not a review of Godzilla for the PS4. The campaign and King of Kaiju modes are cool and all, but what I'm really interested in is the online mode, where you can fight head-to-head with other players. This has pretty much been my life for the past year. I can't get enough of it. It reminds me a lot of the excellent Pipeworks Godzilla trilogy from the 2000s, only with those games the trouble was not exactly having anyone to play with. Multiplayer was local only, with the exception of Save the Earth, but the servers on that thing were down long before I picked up the game, so all I could really do is drag some friends over to play with me locally, but I have a feeling they got tired of me winning all the time real quick. Now, enter the PS4 game. Finally, a chance to play a Godzilla fighting game with other avid players from around the world. This is going to be awful, awesome, painful, amazing, suffering, so much fun, a terrific experience. Yeah, perhaps you can see I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with the online versus mode. But Nate, you just talked about how much you love this game. What happened? Well, yes, I still think the game itself is really cool. It's just when you introduce an online mode with an unpredictable human element that things can get a little messy. First off, let me just give a basic rundown of how the game mode works. You join a 2 or 3 player free-for-all match, going as a monster of your choice from a roster of 22. The left stick is to move around, as you might expect, though tank controls are used, with L1 and R1 for rotating left and right respectively. The square button gives you your basic combo attack, X is usually a mobility-based attack such as a charge, triangle is a stronger melee attack, and circle unleashes your ranged attack, typically some sort of breath or beam. R2 provides a very important game mechanic, a combo breaker attack that instantly gets you out of being staggered for the duration of the move. You'll also take far less damage while the combo breaker is in effect, making it a defensive move as well as an offensive one. Note that both the circle and R2 moves will deplete your energy gauges though, so you can't just use them non-stop. The other defensive option is roaring with L1 and R1 together, which similarly grants you immunity to staggering and resistance to damage. The cool thing about roaring though is that while doing so, you'll have access to one or more extra powerful moves, such as a powered up breath attack. I love this because it means you can actually use roars to intimidate your opponents. Whether or not you follow through with an attack is up to you. There are other miscellaneous moves exclusive to certain characters, like a 180-degree turn for Godzilla, a side dodge for Mothra, and Mecha King Ghidorah's machine hand, but I won't get into those. Bottom line is, each monster will have more or less the same base functions, plus some unique moves that make each one a different experience to play as. Moreover, even the base moves can be quite different from monster to monster, so they'll all have a distinct playing style that will vary even more depending on who they're fighting. I've seen some people criticize the combat for being mindless and requiring no skill, but that's just straight up false. There's actually a lot of nuances to the combat that may not initially meet the eye. Roaring at just the right moment to counter an attack you predicted, waiting until the end of your enemy's combo breaker to activate your own, learning to use proper spacing, dodging and counterattacking, keeping a chain going. The fighting mechanics are honestly incredibly rich, and for anyone who thinks no skill is involved, 1v1 me, bro. One feature of the game I'll admit could be a weak point is the fact that it isn't the most balanced of fighting games. Actually, I don't think it was ever meant to be. The kaiju here clearly come in distinct different classes, from pitifully weak to hopelessly overpowered. And that, I believe, is by design. This is so the monsters you fight in the campaign start out easier but progressively get more difficult as you play through the levels, which makes sense in and of itself. However, for the versus mode, it seems all they did was pluck all these enemy monsters from the base game and threw them all together to fight each other, even though some of them are like this, and others are like this. Now, yeah, obviously this can be kind of a problem, but I'm gonna play a devil's advocate anyway. Personally, I think this blatant power differentiation can actually be kind of interesting. Oftentimes, I love playing as a weaker character just to challenge myself and really push their abilities to the limit. And with 3 players, it's more than possible for a lower tier monster to thrive since alliances can come and go to balance everything out, making for some interesting player dynamics. When everyone plays fair, I believe this game truly shines. It's just that they don't. The versus mode mostly lives through the 3-player mode. On most days, the 1v1 lobbies are a ghost town, so if you want to find a game quick, 3 players is your best bet. However, be prepared for the glaring shortcoming of the 3-way match. Inevitably, somebody always gets teamed. And you know, sometimes this can be okay in short bursts. For instance, if one player has a health advantage over the other 2, I see no reason a brief team-up shouldn't occur to even things out. Unfortunately though, most times this is not what you're gonna get. The majority of teamers here tend to keep their alliance going, stopping at nothing until their target is dead, and only then turning on each other. This is especially unfair if the person being teamed is even playing a lower tier character, as I often do, and this, I've got to say, is the game at its worst. I really wish I could say it doesn't happen often, but sadly, this game's community is just crawling with these teamers. One might say it's teeming with teamers. And for some reason, they're always after me. Some of them certainly do preemptively conspire to do these teaming setups with their buddies, but more often what I see are alliances that just happen in the moment. Probably the most common scenario I find myself in is I'm the first one to attack, right? So me and one other guy are fighting, and I start winning. I'm like, yay, I'm doing good, I'm having fun, all is well. But then, this guy decides to just step in and ruin everything just cause I was winning. And great, now they're teaming, and boom, 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 I'm dead. Every time. Do these people think they're being some kind of heroes, rescuing the losing player? Or are they just afraid of me after seeing me whoop the other guy's ass? Either way, it's just scummy. Like, sure, yeah, you can join in the fight and all, but why is it always me who has to die first? There's a whole other player right there. But no, they both just keep attacking me well past the point where I'm even a threat anymore. They're not interested in playing fairly, they just want to win. Which I guess is really the root problem of many of the annoying player types you can find. When I mentioned the unbalanced roster, you probably knew this was coming. There are those like me who play to have fun, picking a whole variety of monsters, even the weak ones. But then, of course, there are those who insist on maining the most unfathomably broken characters in the game. Because they've just gotta win. At all costs. They don't care how miserable this can be for their opponents. Winning is all that matters, right? I'm talking Biollante players. Burning Godzilla players. Hoo boy, that unholy abomination is freaking everywhere, like every other match. I guess this is what happens when you have no skill, because when you pick these characters non-stop, you might as well be playing the game on easy mode. In the same vein as those who only pick the most overpowered fighters, are those who deliberately choose the monster that counters yours. So they'll join your lobby, check to see which monster you're playing as, back out and rejoin as something that has some advantage over yours. Such a prime example of when players are only concerned with winning. Here in this lobby, we actually see 2 people each trying to one up the other. See, okay, this guy goes as Godzilla, but he's countered by Super Mechagodzilla, so he's out. Comes back as Kiryu, who now counters Super Mechagodzilla, but then he bails out and returns as 2014 Godzilla to counter Kiryu. And he's gone again, of course. And okay, now it looks like he wants an even fight, but oh, nope. The other guy backs out yet again, and now he's got Burning Godzilla, of course. Only the most unfair character in the game. So you see the problem here? Some people just aren't interested in a good fight, they only want an easy victory. And trust me, people will go to all sorts of lengths to get that easy win. Just take a look at some of these other cheap strats I've seen. Some, like the runners, turn to cowardly tactics. These guys will pick a more mobile monster and do everything in their power to stay out of the other player's way, in the hopes the other 2 will finish each other first, giving the runner an easy win. Like, get a load of this guy. Why are you playing a fighting game if you're just gonna spend the whole time running away from the fight?
Why are you running? Why are you running?
I did catch this player eventually, but oftentimes they just rage quit once they're caught, so that's fun. Then we have the sitters, who are sort of like the runners in that their strategy is to wait for the other two players to kill each other first, though in the sitters' case, this is accomplished simply by doing literally nothing. They just sit there, not moving, not reacting, just biding their time. Like, at least runners are still kinda playing the game since they're actively engaged in going around doing stuff, but the sitters spend something like 90% of the game motionless. In other words, most of their time playing the game is spent not playing the game. That is, until they only have one weakened enemy left, when suddenly they'll wake up and move in for the kill. It's often at that point that players will employ an opportunistic strategy, sneaking up when the enemy's back is turned and just going hog wild on them. I swear these people have no honor, like they just go right in and start killing you before you can even turn around, let alone regain a drop of energy. Next thing you know, you're combo locked, and in a low health state, it's unlikely you'll last too long. I don't get why these people have to be so ruthless, because most times, they're already in a winning position anyway, so it just seems a bit overkill to be all sneaky like that. If you're gonna spend the whole match hanging back from danger, then at the end at least have the decency to allow me to gather myself and face you. But it's that winning at all costs complex, of course. Not here to have fun, just to win. Another annoying tactic I see sometimes is the breath spam, staying at a distance and relying exclusively on ranged attacks to kill you before you can even get close. People who do this are cowards like the runners, but arguably even more irritating since their constant barrages can make them more difficult to catch. Of course, I will say that some monsters are less viable in close quarters combat, so a zoning strategy like this can sometimes be necessary. Yet most of the breath spammers I come across are using characters like Kiryu and of course Burning Godzilla, both of whom are exceptional at ranged as well as up close fighting. So why take an already strong character and rely solely on unnecessary cheap tricks to win? Oh, and while we're on the topic of cheap tricks, how about exploits? Some players lean heavily into certain exploits to essentially cheese their way to victory, for instance by picking Super Mechagodzilla and just hovering out of reach and blasting repeatedly. You can blast him back, sure, but actually one of his traits is that ranged attacks barely even affect him. In fact, they power him up. Another common exploit I see is with Gigan's Slicers, which can be spammed to great effect. Once he lands the first round of Slicers, the enemy is kinda just stuck having a seizure while Gigan prepares the next and more powerful batch. And rinse and repeat. It's so OP because he's able to somehow stay locked on far beyond what should be possible, so getting out of this is a nightmare. Basically, the winning move is to just not let Gigan hit you with that first volley at all. Because once he does, I hope you're ready for a world of pain. I really try to stay away from using exploits, but there are like one or two you pretty much have to use in order to stay competitive. The one that really comes to mind is this one. See what just happened there? It seems to be a weird little quirk in the game's programming, where any attack directed against you while you're roaring or using the combo breaker will always push you backwards. Which makes sense for attacks coming from the front, but for those coming from the back, not so much. So essentially, if you face your back to your enemy, you can actually trick them into pulling you closer to them as they use their ranged attack. Pretty useful, but weird. So that pretty much covers the unfair strategies people use, but there's still plenty more annoying social behaviors plaguing the community. There are of course the salty ones who send you angry messages after a loss, like this one which is my favorite. Or this one where the kid is angry and kept dodging his attack so he rage quit. Speaking of which, there's another common thing I see. Pretty much every other match someone's gonna rage quit when they're about to lose, which just leads me to believe the player base is mostly filled with a bunch of spoiled children. Some will even repeatedly disconnect on the loading screen, and I don't know if this is to troll or because they're mad at somebody or what. And people do hold grudges in this game. Not everybody, but some do. Beat them in one match, and then after that they'll spend every subsequent match going after you, usually with some OP character. Who knows why they're so mad?
You shall pay for fighting me in this fighting game.
And yeah, half the time, this really feels like the fighting game where nobody is interested in fighting. Like, look at this. I'm just trying to play the game normally and attack this player, but he keeps walking away. Not even like running, he's just straight up ignoring me. For some reason, it's like an unspoken rule that the city is destroyed first and then we fight, but I never understood why. And sometimes the fight never even happens and everyone just ends up aimlessly wandering around the empty map. What's the deal with these pacifists? This is a game about fighting, not taking an afternoon stroll. This is what happens when everybody wants to use the hanging back strategy. Nothing happens. I'm not a patient guy and I just want to play the game, so normally I'm the one to break the ice and make the first attack, but then naturally I get teamed. Once in a while, I'll find myself in a position where someone is trying to have me as a teammate against the third guy. But again, I try to play fair, so any alliance with me is going to be strictly temporary. The moment that third player loses their health advantage, I'm turning on my teammate to keep things balanced. So you'd think player 3 would be grateful for this, right? Wrong. For some inexplicable reason, they will often continue targeting me, now with player 2 on their side of course, so in the end I just get teamed myself anyway, as usual. I don't understand this fixating strategy. So many people get this tunnel vision thing where they're entirely focused on you and basically won't even acknowledge the third player's existence until you're dead. I've seen many of the stronger players using this strat, which can work if they're able to finish off their first target quickly, but if the guy they're attacking puts up a fight, then the attacker often won't emerge with enough health to defeat player 3. I've seen it happen so many times, but they never learn. There comes a point where these people should just go, okay, we're both pretty hurt here, but that guy over there is at full health, so maybe we should shift our attention to him, right? That would be the smart thing to do, I think. It's precisely because of these fixators that sitters and runners are able to win all the time. Okay, beyond everything I've already said, there isn't much left that's worth discussing in great detail, so I'll briefly summarize. The elites and the tryhards. People who think they're too good for you, or just go completely overboard in stomping you because no one else is allowed to have fun. Chatties. People who won't shut up. Dancers. This game's equivalent of teabagging. Lobby fillers. People who are probably in the other room eating Cheetos and won't press OK when everyone else is ready. Bailers. People who decide they don't want to play with you and repeatedly exit and rejoin the lobby in an attempt to find someone else. And lastly, glitchers. People who just want to dick around and escape the map, which was kinda cool to see the first time, but after like a million times, I don't give a shit anymore. Now it's just a waste of time. Alright, phew, that pretty much covers all the irritating things about the online mode, and at this point you're probably thinking the mode is a complete dumpster fire and not worth touching with a 10-foot pole. Or a 300-foot pole. And maybe you'd be right. With all the crap that goes on in this community, I don't blame anybody for shying away. All too often, the people playing this game just make the experience miserable. And yet, I keep coming back. Godzilla for the PS4 is an amazing game, and despite everything I've said, I still stand by that. It's still one of the few games where you can go head-to-head with other players as giant, city-destroying monsters in glorious HD. Losing a game can be frustrating, but when you win, good God is it satisfying. Sometimes I welcome a good match against some teamers, because when you beat them, you feel like you're on top of the world. In the end, there's no substitute for skill, and once you're good enough at the game, you'll be winning often. Lose with grace though, it isn't all about winning. Winning is the goal, but it's not the point. The point is to have a good, fair match with fun dynamics and tactics. You don't have to go out and do everything in your power to beat the other guy. Just loosen up, have fun, because when you win from fair play alone, you don't just feel good about the game, you can feel good about yourself too. To sum it all up, game good, players bad. The game itself has a ton of interesting ideas with a varied, asymmetric roster of characters who are loads of fun to learn and unlock their full potential. With enough practice, even a literal baby can be a force to be reckoned with. The combat mechanics are genuinely fun, offering a variety of different strategies that are possible with each matchup. You can try to tank the damage, or you can dodge it. You can use ranged attacks, or you can slug it out up close. You can run, you can fly, you can do this. You can punch, kick, bite, even throw your enemies around. It's frankly just epic to watch. Honestly, the one thing holding back the versus mode is dumb people being stupid. That's all there is to it. But over time, you learn to deal with them and focus on what truly makes the game great. This is Great Nate 98 with a cautious recommendation of Godzilla on the PS4. Just as long as you have a little bit of patience. And an unhealthy obsession with giant monsters. And I'm not sure how much longer they're going to keep the servers up on this aging game, so this could well be our last chance in a while to play a proper kaiju fighting game online. I'm gonna ride this wave while it lasts, and I hope to see you there. Unless you're this guy.